Greetings, friends. Reformed Stoic here, back with another video. Nice, cozy winter evening with a fire going. So a thought process kind of just ran through my mind about the election. I was actually just watching Moon's latest video on how Joe Rogan made the mainstream media look silly. And I started thinking, you know what? Joe Rogan might as well have been what won Donald Trump the election. A lot of other things won Trump the election. Probably the main thing was that Biden, fizzled out and got replaced by Kamala at the last minute. But a big deciding factor, if we can just pretend that Kamala ever had any shot of winning, is that Donald Trump was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And then it just started getting me thinking about how completely out of touch the modern left is. Now, I'm trying to come at this from a perspective, it's the perspective that I have. Like, anybody who knows my politics knows that I'm highly skeptical of Trump and the future that's coming. I'm not a MAGA-pede. I'm not somebody who blindly embraces Trump. One of my former teachers, I guess you could say, which is an interesting way to put it, got me into this whole idea that, the establishment is trying to make it look like Trump is this cowboy when really he is the establishment, when he is the deep state. And it's a very interesting angle to look at. You look at the kind of people that Trump is aligning himself with, Joe Rogan being one of them. Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, Dana White, those are all incredibly powerful men, some more than others, but Elon Musk getting positions built into his cabinet, I want to say, or just, being a part of Trump's regime, we'll call it. It's something very powerful, and more or less, really where I'm at lately is I'm trying to be optimistic. But the only point I was trying to make, I don't want to get lost, is that I'm not some, MAGA-pede MAGA guy. I'm skeptical of Trump. But when I say that the left is really out of touch, it's just the truth. It doesn't mean that I'm some diehard Republican. The objective truth of the matter is that the left is completely out of touch, and Joe Rogan is the key to understanding that. Bernie Sanders was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He got completely thrown under the bus and demolished by the Democrat Party. One of the funniest videos to me of the past is watching when Black Lives Matter took over a Bernie Sanders rally. Bernie Sanders was, Bernie Sanders' platform, I'm honestly a little bit curious about it. I'd like to go back into it and take a look at what he was saying. I remember he was talking about sticking it to the billionaires. He's talking about sticking it to the billionaires, which is eye-rolling, not because it's not a good idea. Hey, no, absolutely. Yeah, sure, let's do what Bernie Sanders says. It's just never going to happen. But then you look at what the Democrat Party did to Bernie Sanders. It's like, hey, maybe Bernie Sanders really wanted to try to do that, But it didn't happen. And some people will call Bernie Sanders communist. It's like, well, off the top of my head, I think what the Sander Knights, what the Bernie Sanders people have to say about that is billionaires paying their fair share is not communism. It's taxes that wouldn't be oppressive to the middle class. And the right-wing rhetoric against that is like, oh, it's always oppressive to the middle class and trickle-down theory. And these are all debates that I'm somewhat neutral on. But this is, on some level, what the left used to be before they were out of touch. Tulsi Gabbard was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Tulsi Gabbard used to be a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard is now going to be working for Trump's regime, is just what I'm going to call it. I can't come up with the right word. They're not necessarily part of the cabinet, but, you know, Elon Musk is part of the Trump regime. Tulsi Gabbard is becoming part of the Trump regime. It sounds like Bernie Sanders is trying to get a spot on the Trump regime. These people were Democrats once upon a time. They're jumping ship, bro. So this isn't me with a Make America Great Again hat, MAGA-peed, you know. This is the objective truth. Now, so I just want to be able to chime in on regular politics, because what happens when you're a conspiracy theory guy sometimes is you don't even like pay attention to real world politics, and you're like, oh, you know, it's just all a dog and pony show, it's just all a sham, and I'm so red-pilled and based, and then you don't even really know anything about what politicians do. So I'm trying to have one foot in each world, and I'm trying to get more into just less fringe mainstream politics, wanting to be optimistic and supportive of Trump as a president and Trump's presidency, because I want to be optimistic about the future for America. I would love to believe things like the
mass deportation.
I mean, what a lot of people know is that the
mass deportation
would probably collapse the country, because the country is being propped up by illegal work. But I digress on that. This is just like a quick thought that I wanted to put out there. I don't think this is going to go much longer. It's really funny watching the media kind of collapse in on itself, and Joe Rogan is really the center of all of it. I mean, that is what this video is about. I think the title is going to be Joe Rogan is what won Trump the election. It's not necessarily that that's true. That's just a good clickbait title. But this all hinges on Joe Rogan. The left is objectively completely out of touch. Once upon a time, they had Bernie Sanders. He was on Joe Rogan podcast. They had Tulsi Gabbard. She was on Joe Rogan podcast. Both of those people want to work for Trump now. And, you know, Kamala definitely could have did the Joe Rogan podcast, and it was something that was in the works. But then you just think about it, it's like, it probably would have been awkward. Like, they wouldn't have really had much to talk about. And I was kind of cringing when I was watching Trump and Joe Rogan. I can't remember if I watched the whole thing. I think I did. I think I had it on in the background and did other stuff. But I was cringing because Joe was, like, swearing a lot. Joe Rogan was, like, swearing a lot and just bro-duding it out with Donald Trump. And when I was watching that, I'm like, you know, have some respect, Joe. Like, this is not really a good look for you to be, like, dude broing, dropping F-bombs every 10 seconds with this potential president and the former president of the United States. But it's what won him the election. It's pretty much what won him the election, assuming that Kamala ever had a shot in hell, which, looking at the numbers, it looks like she really didn't. Like, it was a clean sweep. It was an absolute MAGA red wave. I just want to throw in something a little bit, like, random, but it's relevant. One of the drummers of My Chemical Romance recently passed away at 44. Very sad, very young to be dying. I'm in a hardcore group, like a hardcore 90s music group on Facebook, and somebody brought that up, and then people were like, rest in piss, and they're saying horrible, disrespectful things because he had a MAGA hat and he voted Trump. He made some comment about transgender people, but it was basically solely because he was a Trump voter. They were saying horrible things about this guy who died young, and it was not like a pretty thing. Like, he was found in his apartment rotting away, or in his home. He probably had a really nice house. He was found in his home like 3 weeks after he died, they estimated. And it was not pretty, and he died young. And these people are saying horrible, unspeakable things about this dead person that I don't even want to repeat, solely because of the fact that he voted for Trump. And like in their mind, it's because, you know, Trump is a fascist or whatever, but how these people can be so vile and nasty and then play the victim, like, you know, like they're the virtue, they have the virtue high ground or the moral high ground or whatever. It's truly shocking. So as somebody who is kind of, you know, on the fringe side of politics, like, do I think Joe Rogan is red pill? I think maybe people like Joe Rogan are the new establishment. I think the deep state realizes that the mainstream legacy media is dying, and now they're going to prop up people like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, and they're trying to trick people into thinking that they're with alternative media when they're not. You want to talk real red pills, you can look up somebody named Matthew North on like BitChute and Rumble, who made a bunch of videos like connecting Joe Rogan to a bunch of you know, high level kind of like deep state big money funding, and he was found in a car with a bullet in his head, bro. Like that's red pill. Joe Rogan is not red pill. Sorry, I have something in my eye. Sorry if that's gross to look at that. But I'm trying to be optimistic. I like Joe Rogan. I watched the Joe Rogan podcast before it was big. I think I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast back in like 2010, man. So let me know in the comments, like, if that really was pretty early. It was. I mean, I was telling people about the Joe Rogan podcast, and then like 5 years later or so, it was just freaking larger than life. I mean, it grew to be the biggest podcast in the world. And as far as money, I mean, Joe Rogan is definitely a multi-millionaire. You know, yeah, you just look at what Trump's got going. You know, Trump, once upon a time, was a billionaire. I'm not sure where he's at. Elon Musk, one of like top 5 richest people in the world, I believe. Top 10. Dana White, probably a billionaire. I mean, that is a lot of money. And then you got other political people joining with Trump. I mean, what I'm trying to convey in this video, guys, is that it's not about me being biased. It's not that I'm a MAGA guy or that like I'm just so crazy about Trump. I mean, I watch people who I respect, like Jordan Owen. He's got a smaller YouTube channel, but you know, I recommend his channel from time to time. He also went to Berkeley, and he's in this like hysteria and saying, "Oh my gosh, fascism and hatred won." And respectfully, bro, I've already said this enough. It's not about me being for Trump. Like, the left has objectively just completely lost touch, and it's symbolic. It's represented by the fact that Donald Trump did the Joe Rogan podcast and Kamala Harris didn't. And all the Democrats who did the Joe Rogan podcast in the past all want to work for Trump. It's seen in things like the left mocking and ridiculing a dead, you know, maybe B-list celebrity and the drummer from My Chemical Romance, all because he voted for Donald Trump and wore a MAGA hat. And it's like, you guys are so completely out of touch. I live in 2 worlds at the same time. Part of me thinks, you know, hidden hand, it doesn't matter. It's all controlled by the freaking glowies and the secret societies and the people in power, and it's all just a dog and pony show, and ultimately, like, the deep state is just slithering into a different spot. Part of me thinks that, but then part of me wants to be optimistic and considers, hey, you know what? Yeah, these people have money. And just addressing that real quick, money rules. Okay, this idea that people are evil because they got money, they're going to be in charge. And it's almost ironic to me when people talk about fascism. And as I deepen my understanding of systems of government, it's really not a one-to-one correlation between monarchism and fascism at all. In fact, fascism really arguably could have been something that was like a money rules kind of scenario. Like there was some hidden hands playing the whole dialectic between fascism and communism, and there was money powers at play even then. But on paper, fascism, and then more so monarchism, those are the only systems of government where money doesn't rule. The whole idea of the Freemasons doing their, democracy rebellion against the crown, against monarchism, is because the crown is the only thing that protects people from money ruling. I believe, and I say I live in these two worlds, but I'm pretty sure this is what I believe, that overthrowing the crown has paved the way for oligarchy, for money to be the deciding factor, and the voting and the political parties, it's all just a dog and pony show. Now Donald Trump is the wild card. And yeah, I've never voted in my life, but I did want Trump to win, at risk of some very loud minorities, not racial minorities. Like, ultimately, it looked to me like Donald Trump just completely dominated in the election. So I say minority, like most of the country is Trump supporters, from my understanding. So they're a very loud minority in that sense when you're a Kamala supporter. But I'm getting tied up in my ramble. It's about time to end this video. Basically, Trump is a wild card, and if anybody is this guy who can't be bought and is going to do things his way and is going to upset the establishment, it's going to be Donald Trump, because he was a billionaire, self-made, more or less. I recommend you guys check out the made-for-TV movie, Donald Trump, Unauthorized. It came out in 2005. I think that actor who played Trump did a phenomenal job. It was rated very low and kind of like swept under the rug, but I definitely think it's worth seeing. If there's ever a politician who is this like Batman politician who has the means to usurp entities like the deep state and hidden hand, it would theoretically be Trump, because everybody else doesn't have the kind of money that he has, and they are going to be at the whim of the big money. So, there will be other videos to address these other aspects and things, but at the risk of beating a dead horse at this point, I really just wanted to say the left is so objectively out of touch, and people like Jordan Owen who are talking about, oh, it's sad that hatred and fascism won. It's like, bro, it was not even close. The election was not even close. The legacy media, they're saying things like, oh, Joe Rogan believes in dragons. And they're doubling down, and they're trying to attack Joe Rogan, and it's over. It is completely over. This country is going to drown in a red wave, and if Trump actually does some sort of mass deportations, it's so crazy. Like, when does he get inaugurated? In like a month from now? I really can't imagine like what's coming for this country. He has these big claims, and like I said, like people have said, it's likely impossible to do those kind of deportations economically. Like this country is propped up by illegal labor. But if it happens somehow on any level, I just think we might enter some sort of like a golden age of MAGA. But I don't know who's going to come after Trump. Maybe Barron, maybe Barron will run, and then maybe Barron will have kids, and I gotta tell you, man, leftists, if there's any way I can prove that I'm not completely biased here, you need to get your people on Joe Rogan. But here's my closing thoughts on this, why would Kamala Harris never go on Joe Rogan? Why do I think that was just never going to happen, and there's no reason for it to happen? Because the modern left that is out of touch, that has pushed out people like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, it's like this popularity contest. They are just fully doing everything they can to appeal to the Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, Cardi B, listening, legacy media, CNN, MSNBC, consuming boomers and normies. Jimmy Kimmel watching, Jimmy Fallon watching, crying over hatred and fascism because Trump won in a landslide. Complete out of touch boomer box watching boomers and normies. And it looks like that's not the majority of the country anymore. All you had to do was go on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I think maybe it could have been possible for that to be a thing. But politicians like Kamala and Hillary Clinton, they're just so a part of this new wave. It's all feminism and LGBT, trans, and kind of just anti-white, basically, is what it comes down to. And I wanted to throw in closing, my thoughts on what the left thinks fascism is. Sometimes the right says that the left is communists, sometimes the left says that the right are fascists. And neither is the case. But from my worldview, the glowies and the hidden hand, the deep state ultimately has all the power and money rules. So yeah, basically we do live in this kind of totalitarian society, but there's an illusion protecting you from it, like the Matrix. I mean, beating the dead horse once again, but the Matrix metaphor is just completely spot on. And other dystopia novels like 1984 and Brave New World is this idea that you live in the most oppressive kind of totalitarian regime possible, but you don't understand because the elite has spent all these centuries trying to craft this invisible prison. But in reality, the left aren't really a communist regime and the right isn't really a fascist regime. It's this tug of war where, they're talking about right-wingers you're such an idiot, you're voting for a big boot that's going to stomp on you. But is Kamala Harris's United States really some big breath of fresh air, freedom for the kind of people who vote for Trump? It's tug of war. It's either going to be a society that lays back and stops barking at white people with all this woke, really annoying horse shit, or it's going to be the opposite of that, which is liberated and free for everybody who's not white. And no, it's not Bolshevik communism for white people, but it's annoying. If the left wins, it's annoying, and you're low-key probably being pushed out of jobs, more so when the left wins for white people. And then when the right wins, the left has a big meltdown, but basically it's just a little less annoying. The system tries to acknowledge that this really annoying cancer has infiltrated everything, and don't worry, it's still going to be in all the fucking universities. They have absolutely got their fucking cultural Marxists completely camped out in the universities. I saw that firsthand when they were literally telling us that we had to live in a one-world totalitarian government in my Anthropology 101 class, and then in my Sociology 101 class, laughing when they showed everybody in the world having the same amount of money and said, oh, the dreaded socialism is like everybody in the world having the same amount of money. That's literally communism. So the universities are a hotbed of literal fucking commies and socialists and cultural Marxists. That's not going to change, regardless of who the president is. That's not going to change. But, yeah, like, calling it fascism, like, you guys are literally in a mass hysteria. You're completely out of touch. And I say this as somebody who's honestly kind of just, like, sitting back watching the dominoes fall. Like, yeah, I think on some level Trump's regime maybe is the deep state in a way that a lot of people don't even understand. But I want to be positive. I want to be supportive. And for right here, for right now, I just got to tell you, the Democrat Party is completely out of touch. And Joe Rogan was your last shot. Kamala Harris needed to go on Joe Rogan. You needed to apologize when you said that Joe Rogan believes in dragons, but the media is dogpiling on Joe Rogan and saying, oh, you know, he took horse medication, and it's happened over and over and over. How many times has the media attacked Joe Rogan, and every single time they lose? And every single time Joe Rogan's stock goes up, and Joe Rogan might as well be on a fucking platinum throne, like, hovering over everything. And yeah, like what Matthew North pointed out, rest in peace, is because he has a lot of fucking hidden funding. And I don't think that Joe Rogan's podcast is necessarily the, like, wild, wild west gunslinging, oh, this is just freedom of information, and I'm a completely self-made independent thinker. And, you know, I mean, I just fucking try to see things how they are, guys. And part of that is that I don't really think it matters who wins the election. But final time I'll say this, at the risk of sounding redundant. This video was somewhat redundant, but it was fun to have this rant. Lefties, you need to, like, sit down and get a fucking reality check. If you ever want to have a shot of winning another election ever again, this country is MAGA now. This is MAGA town now, sweetie. And I don't give a shit about it. But you will never, ever, ever, ever win another election ever again if the media keeps attacking Joe Rogan, if you don't have your politicians on Joe Rogan. I mean, and it's kind of over now. Like, it's kind of past the point of no return. You guys are all dogpiling Joe Rogan, and people who seem to me like they are pretty reasonable politicians, like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, want to work for Trump. And I'm very excited and curious to see what happens to this country over the next 5 years. And I am somewhat optimistic for Trump's presidency. It will at least be a breath of fresh air. It's not because I'm a fascist. It's not because I hate anybody. It's not because I'm racist. White men, chuds like me, are really annoyed. It's like you're in my face. I'm trying to help you. It's like you're in my face. You don't understand how privileged you are. You're a white male. You're a fucking white male misogynist. Like, I'm annoyed. I didn't do anything to you. I've never, like, been married or had a big successful career. I've never really gotten very far in life, and I think I'm a smart guy, and I think I probably should have done better in life. I think part of the reason I didn't do better, amongst a lot of things, is because the society's getting so fucking wacky, you know? I was on a group. I was on a Facebook group at UNLV. It was like, hey guys, you know, first semester, and are there any parties going on tonight? I left some little status in this UNLV group trying to see if there's any parties or ways to socialize. Don't invite him. He's in a fucking Trump group. Some fucking lady who was, you know, a little bit bigger than your average lady. She said that nobody should invite me to anything because I was on a Trump group. on Facebook. And yeah, I just think everything being the same, if I went to the university in the early 2000s or the 90s or before, there's a pretty good chance that that wouldn't have happened. And maybe somebody would have told me about a party, and maybe I would have went, and maybe I would have made friends, and maybe I would have had a fucking social life, you know? So I'm really annoyed with the left. I'm like really annoyed. I think, you know, MGTOW and feminism are kind of similar. MGTOW is like a reaction to feminism, but women are less in a place where they're marriageable. And I think it's because of what they're learning at university. I think they're getting radicalized. And I also think men are being radicalized. Yes, I know about men being radicalized on the right as well, but this video has officially gone on too long. I think Joe Rogan is kind of the key in all of this. He's just kind of this shit test for the new world that is coming. If you can't hang out with Joe Rogan and have him like interrupt you and swear in your face and like be a fence sitter and say, hey Jamie, pull up that shit, and like if you can't just like rant with the lovable, goofy Joe Rogan, then you're fucking out of touch. And when you attack him, it just gets worse. So this video is like a gift to the left, because the last like 5 years was thinking, I can't believe I live in a country that is so like swarmed with these kind of people. But what we're starting to realize is that you guys aren't even close to the majority, and a lot of people have woken up and taken baby's first red pill in like the last couple of years, and it's fucking over. Like, you guys should unironically fucking move and leave, because you're really obnoxious, you're really annoying, you're really out of touch, and this is not your country anymore. God bless.